What's going on, Fourth and Inches podcast listeners? You got Dan, Kevin, Stevie P coming at you. What's going on, fellas?
What's going on, fellas? What's going on, world?
What up?
All right, Monday podcast. So we will, of course, get into the waiver wire, get into our good and bad calls from this past week. But first, don't forget to check us out on our website at www.fourthandinchesff.com. That's www.4thandinchesff.com for a bunch of content. You got articles, blogs, player profiles, rankings, and you can subscribe to our VIP content. This will give you access to DFS info, and it'll also give you access to the cheat codes, which we'll keep updated monthly. So check those out, and also look for us on the Fantasy Life app. We'll be doing start-sit questions on there throughout the year. And if you're listening to the podcast, make sure you hit that subscribe button and give us a 5-star rating. Also, if you're interested in doing a $2 FanDuel tournament with, your favorite podcast host here, look into the show notes and the link to a FanDuel tournament that, all three of us participate in. We'll be there. Just click on it and, it'll take you right to the, where you need to be. So, just a great way to get in, for us to get involved with you guys and for you guys to test your wits against us. So now we're going to get into the news from the week.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent and horrifying news story. And I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
All right, so Brandon Cooks has already been ruled out for Week 11 against the Bears. We heard all his concussion stuff last week, and doesn't look like it's getting any better this week.
I think that's the primetime game on Sunday night.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Rams center Brian Allen will miss the remainder of the season following a knee injury to this past week. Ian Rappaport reports Devontae Freeman could miss about 2 weeks with what is believed to be a sprained foot.
No loss there.
NFL Network's Ian Rappaport reports Austin Hooper has been diagnosed with a sprained MCL. I think he's seeking a second opinion to determine how long he will potentially be out for. Chiefs defensive end Emmanuel Ogbah, he will miss the remainder of the season after suffering a torn pec this past week. For you guys watching the Monday night game, Josh Gordon is active. 49ers left tackle Joe Staley and right tackle Mike McGlinchey are both active in this game, while George Kittle is inactive. Cliff Kingsbury said David Johnson has obviously been hampered by the back and ankle injuries he's been dealing with this season. I hope that's what it is, because he has not looked good, and other running backs in that system have looked good.
That son of a bitch.
Frank Reich said Jacoby Brissett will start this week if he's a full participant in practice on Wednesday. Coach Matt Patricia said Matthew Stafford is truly day-to-day and week-to-week. He kind of popped up on the radar at the end of the week, and they, talked about him dealing with a back issue, and then it was revealed that he had fractured bones in his back, and he wound up being inactive on Sunday. So, Stafford is definitely going to be somebody you're going to pay attention to for the upcoming weeks. If you are streaming a quarterback, starting him, he's been really good this year.
Yeah, real quick. So I just want to get into that real quick before we just continue, because this is exactly what happened to him last year. If you guys remember, we talked about how Matt Stafford was off last year. He didn't look good. He's normally a top 12 guy. You know what I mean? And last year he just wasn't. You know what I mean? I think the previous 7 seasons in a row, he had finished inside the top 10 at as a fantasy quarterback. And everybody last year was like, oh, what the hell's going on with him? And he revealed at the end of the season that he had a fracture in his back. So if that's the same injury, let's say he re-injured that same injury, and we haven't heard that. They didn't say it's the exact same injury, but they did say it's a fracture in his back. That's a problem, because we saw how bad he looked last year. So definitely keep your eyes and ears open to what's going on with Matthew Stafford.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure Carson Wentz actually had the same thing last year, and they wound up, at one point pretty much benching him for the year and just saying, get healthy. because they figured that at that point they were out of it. So if the Lions start to see that they're out of it over the next couple of weeks, you may just not see Stafford for the rest of the year.
But the Lions do Lions do not have a miracle worker named Nick Foles as their backup.
Yeah. They don't have,
I don't think that. Yeah, I don't think the Eagles thought Nick Foles was getting them to the playoffs last year either. By the way, but
listen, after that run 2 years ago, everybody was pretty hyped up.
And I think it's clear Jeff Driscoll will not be getting the Lions. To the
no,
it was rough.
All right, former Bears running back Mike Davis has been claimed off waivers by the Panthers. Coach Dan Quinn said he'd be confident with Brian Hill in a lead role. This is somebody, Steve brought him up, I believe, on the podcast a couple weeks ago. I'm sorry, excuse me. And, now you're going to get him to see him thrust into action. And if you picked him up, a couple weeks back when Steve talked about it, for the next couple weeks, you may actually have a solid starter at the running back spot. And who knows? I mean, with the way Devontae Freeman has been playing this year, Brian Hill, if he does well, could take that job. Eagles signed right guard Brandon Brooks to a 4-year, $54.2 million extension through 2024, making him the highest paid guard in the league. Zach Taylor called A.J. Green day-to-day. This one is something you're going to want to watch because
we heard that last week.
If he's calling him day-to-day and A.J. says, nah, I'm not playing, this is more about a contract dispute and, A.J. saying, look, this is,
it's a lost season
contract year, and I'm not risking injury for this terrible team. I mean, you guys saw the Ravens game. They don't even. I mean, they have their backup. Bengals are bad.
They have their backup in. Joe Mixon has looked awful all year. It's been an absolute dumpster fire for Cincy. And if he sits there and doesn't play the rest of the year, I would not be shocked at all.
I'll tell you what, though. If
Joe didn't look good. Joe didn't look bad yesterday.
For real. If they're going to give Joe Mixon 30 carries,
that's their only hope.
I'm letting you know. This quarterback should have started 4 weeks ago because Joe Mixon would have been saving people's fantasy leagues. I'm letting you know. If Joe Mixon's going to see 25 plus carries a game, they ain't going to lose like this. But they were losing and he saw 30 carries. I'm letting you know. Joe Mixon might mess around and win people leagues if they're going to run him like this because they have a rookie quarterback back there. I'm letting you know.
Hey. James Conner was listed as a full participant in Monday's practice. They have the Thursday game, but it looks like he's going to play. Mike Tomlin said he's pretty confident that James Conner will be out there on Thursday. So Cliff Kingsbury said Patrick Peterson is day-to-day and could play this week. Jets coach Adam Gase said Chris Herndon, suffered a rib injury and will be out an extended amount of time. Le'Veon Bell also suffered rib injuries, sore ribs in that game, but came out of it. Adam Gase said, he is okay. So it's looking like Le'Veon Bell will be pretty good for next week. Washington coach Bill Callahan says Dwayne Haskins will start for the rest of the season. Sorry, all you Terry McLaurin owners.
Yeah.
Rookie quarterback Drew Lock will practice tomorrow. This will open his 21-day window up after being on IR. So this will mean he would have to be active on the 53-man roster no later than week 14.
Oh, he's playing.
Yeah, he eventually will be their starter. This one is interesting. Rams coach Sean McVay said inserting Blake Bortles into the Rams' Week 10 loss against the Steelers was quote-unquote part of the game plan.
Bullshit.
Texans coach Bill O'Brien said Will Fuller returned to practice today. Sterling Shepard is still in the concussion protocol, but he will be practicing this week. Marshawn Lattimore is week to week with a hamstring strain. That pretty much looks like it's it. When asked about Todd Gurley's relatively light workload in Week 10, Rams coach Sean McVay said that was just kind of the rotation.
Bullshit.
He better change that rotation real quick because Todd Gurley looked pretty good yesterday, and he did not give him the ball enough. And for some reason, Malcolm Brown is just still playing snaps. Like, give this
Brown
man.
Brown and Henderson had
Whoa,
like
that was an
10
all-out blitz. It just took out.
They just
the two of them.
ass.
The two of them had like 10 carries for 14 yards combined, and Gurley had like 10 carries for 70 some yards. I don't understand, what their plan is. I don't know if they really are trying to save Todd Gurley, but Todd Gurley is like the 24th ranked running back right now, and he was drafted every single league, first or second round. So it's
telling you right now, the best thing that could have possibly happened to Todd Gurley owners happened yesterday. He had a good game on a very limited snap count, and they are losing. The Rams are losing. They just lost to the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers with no James Conner, no Ben Roethlisberger. They had no business losing that game yesterday. So guess what?
Coming off a bye week.
Yes. They had no business losing that game yesterday. So now they have to start giving Todd Gurley work because Jared Goff sucks ass. He is straight garbage. Sucky butt. My man is
them sons of bitches lost me my survivor pool to the frickin' Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Dude.
At home.
Yes, bad. He is the most sucky butt. It's just terrible. They
I don't want to say the most.
Okay, maybe not the most.
He's
dude. Coming off a bye week, it almost looked like they didn't have a bye week. It almost looked like they went to Pittsburgh on 2 days rest.
I've been telling you guys. I feel like Bill Belichick figured out McVay in the Super Bowl, and that is just being played out throughout this season.
Yeah.
It's obviously did not affect Cooper Kupp's numbers, but Robert Woods until yesterday has been very, very average. Brandon Cooks has been non-existent throughout the year. He's been dealing with injuries and stuff, but I mean, this offense was state of the art for the last 2 years. Like, you couldn't stop it. They were 30 points a game pretty much. And now, man, they're struggling to get 20. I mean, it's bad.
It's bad. And Cooper Kupp yesterday, every time the ball got thrown his way, he had a epileptic seizure.
He did. He was dropping balls.
Like, what is going on? Like, literally he was dropping everything. It looked like he was like, I don't know what the hell it was. I don't know if he just heard Minka Fitzpatrick coming to kill his ass and decided I'm not catching this, but it was ridiculous.
Yeah, it was bad. Coop definitely had a bad game yesterday. Robert Woods actually had a pretty good one. I think he had like 7 for 95 in the game. So, hopefully better days are ahead for the Rams offense, because a lot of people are have pieces in that offense. This is one of the best offenses coming into the year, we thought. And, they had 3 receivers and a running back all going in the first 4 rounds. So, Yeah. All right. So let's start to get into our shining stars for the week. This is where we go over our good calls. Dan, why don't you start it off with your shining stars, your good calls for the week?
All right. We'll start off with quarterback. Well, I'll just name them all. Quarterback, I went with Kyler Murray. He definitely showed up against Tampa Bay. I had Derek Carr on my roster as well, and I was kind of, back and forth, but you really can't sit Kyler Murray because I looked today and he's ranked number 5th in overall in quarterbacks this year. He's working his way up slowly. I think he's getting so much more comfortable back there in the offense, and his running ability. Even though he's not Lamar with 700 yards, he's still 300 range. So for a quarterback, that's very productive to put up those kind of numbers as well. So Kyler, even though they lost by a few points to Tampa Bay, it wasn't because of him. Actually, it kind of was because of him on that last drive. One of those last drives, he threw a stupid interception where he could have just. If he didn't make that play, they could have got a field goal there and went and pushed it into a tie. But he forced a ball and it was picked. So, but he's a rookie. He's going to learn from those mistakes. He's definitely in the conversation of rookie of the year. Running back, Thursday night game that we spoke a lot about, and I liked a lot of guys, but I really liked Melvin Gordon. Spoke about him starting to see a whole bigger workload. kind of not fading Eckler out, but I mean, when you see these two touch the ball, as good as Eckler is with the ball in his hands, and Eckler did have another touchdown, Melvin Gordon he's just dynamic. I mean, it's never been an issue of him producing. It's just, a little bit of injuries here and there. And of course, with the holdout this year, but when Melvin Gordon is on the field, the guy is a monster. He's a top 5 running back when he's out there playing. And he showed Thursday night that he's got his legs back under him and he looked awesome. And third was the guy that I picked to be kind of like a standout star, and I kind of took a little gamble on it, but I liked Crowder against the Giants. Giants secondary is awful. And he had 80 and a touchdown, back-to-back weeks with a touchdown. He got a touchdown a few weeks ago as well. And, week 1, he looked real good, but then he was plagued by injuries. But Crowder's definitely another guy when he's out there. He's another injury bug guy, but when he's out there playing, he looks good. And, that's on a Jets team that's not very good at all, but he's definitely a bright spot in that offense. They got some pieces over there. They just have to put it all together, and they need a new coach.
Yep.
Ooh, Emmanuel Sanders heading to the locker room.
Yeah.
All right, Steve, why don't you go with your shining stars now?
All right. My shining stars of the week this week were Mitchell Trubisky. I told you guys Mitchell Trubisky sucks huge ass, but I liked him this week. And
took away from my Montgomery points there.
Yeah, you're not lying. Yeah, I did like Mitch this week. I told you guys, if you needed a quarterback in a pinch, because 6 guys on bye week, Mitch would be a guy that I would start. I wouldn't be super happy about it, but I would start him. And he finished the quarterback 8 on the week. So, he didn't probably win you the week, but he definitely didn't lose you the week, finishing at 8. Aaron Jones, I told you guys don't be scared of starting Aaron Jones after a terrible, terrible week, in week 9. And Aaron Jones was the number 3 running back on the week. So, I told you he would bounce back and be good, and that's exactly what he was. He was very good. Larry Legend. I said that Larry Legend, was a guy that had not been producing since week 2. He's been very off, not really doing much of anything. He had 2 weeks where he had less than double-digit yards, which is crazy for a wide receiver in the NFL. But, I said that I liked him this week, and if you needed him, he would finish around, as a number 2, high-end number 3, low-end number 2, and he finished wide receiver 17. So, that's pretty good call, I would say.
All right, so my shining stars for the week, I'm going to start at quarterback, Dak Prescott. This was, a lot of people would think it's a little tougher matchup. Of course, with the Vikings having Xavier Rhodes out there, Trey Waynes did not play, and Mike Hughes was just getting targeted. Like, they were literally going after him it seemed like every throw. And Xavier Rhodes just don't look like the same quarterback, but, a lot of people just think that, Vikings, tough matchup. I had him ranked number 6. He wound up finishing number 5 for the week. So, definitely a good call on Dak. He's been solid all year and, definitely was pretty good this week. My good call from the running back position was Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry right now is the number 1 running back for the week. And I believe I had him at number 5. This was a great matchup. Going against Kansas City, it was definitely a good way to keep them in the game, especially once Mahomes was ruled to be in. Usually when Mahomes is playing, the other team is just going to be trying to run the ball because they don't want Mahomes to be on the field. And obviously Kansas City's defense is not very good at stopping the run or the pass. So, in a complete upset, with the Titans beating the Chiefs, Derrick Henry was obviously the biggest part of that. He ran for 188 yards, 2 touchdowns, had that 60-something yard rush for a touchdown. Definitely had a big game. And my wide receiver for the week was Christian Kirk. I had Christian Kirk ranked number 20. Obviously, for this week, he is going to finish as number 1. So obviously, I didn't have him as high as he finished, but I definitely thought he was a very good starter this week. And, you know, this was his week to blow up. I mean, going against Tampa Bay, who can't stop anybody, you know, this was just destined to happen. You know, Christian Kirk has been relatively quiet all year. He's had a couple good games with, you know, just based off receptions. But, you know, this is the kind of game, not necessarily exactly like this, because you're not going to get 3 touchdowns in every game. But these are the kind of games I could see Christian Kirk having with Kyler Murray, with this offense, and, you know, getting a Bucs team that just can't stop anybody. Christian Kirk was a definite start. You know, just a really solid player to play this week.
So I want to real quick though, before I get into mine, where through week 10, where are we at on you guys' little side bet there between Derrick Henry with the over under touches?
Oh, he's on pace for he's on pace for total touches like 300 and like I think it's like 3. I checked it the other day. It was like 323 or something like that.
323. Yeah, you're probably very good possibility you're winning that one as long as he stays healthy.
Yeah.
Which I gotta say, I'm glad you are.
Yeah, you have him in our league, so
yeah. Now Kyler Murray, on the other hand, that one's still up for grabs.
Yeah,
Kyler Murray, he has to have 305 fantasy points. I'm pretty sure.
What does he have right now? I know he has like 180.
He's like
something.
He's like 170, high 170s, 180 range.
Yeah, I thought he was like 180 something.
Yeah, he's having an excellent year for.
I just need him to have 2 blow up games. If he has 2 blow up games, I really do have a chance.
He's got the Niners.
Pretty sure he's going to have the Niners coming up soon.
He's got the Niners this week.
Oh yeah, so much for that shit.
He had a great game when they played him last time.
Yeah, he did have a pretty good game last year.
All right, so
let me do
the dumpster divers. Yeah, you want to lead off the dumpster divers as well?
Yeah, Drew Brees.
Yeah, I think everybody Drew Brees was everybody's dumpster diver.
Yeah, it really. I mean, it's just if you have Drew Brees, you weren't sitting him for, you know. I mean, so it was just a bad game, a bad call for everybody. That, you know, I mean, no analyst sat there and said sit Drew Brees against Atlanta at home. I mean, we even talked about how much the Saints could possibly get up on Atlanta early, you know, in the game, and that's why I thought maybe Matt Ryan could have a decent game trying to throw to get his way back into the game. But the Saints forgot how to play football on Sunday, and they were terrible. I mean, that was one of the worst exhibitions that I've seen New Orleans ever play at home, like under Drew Brees ever.
That was a wake-up call.
Yeah. So, I mean, Drew Brees was definitely a dumpster diver call for myself, anybody else that thought he was going to produce, you know, big numbers like, you know, we expect him to do at home. Running back, guy I've been toting for the last couple of weeks, been riding him high. Montgomery. I just liked him. You know, just his confidence is high, and it's not for the lack of effort. They did still give him the ball 17 times. He had 60 yards, but he didn't get the touchdowns or the receptions. He didn't even get a target in this game. So, you know, in PPR, his numbers have been adding up pretty good in those 20s. Even at close to a 30 game last week or a couple weeks ago, because he's been getting targets, but he didn't get any targets this past week. So low numbers for him, single digits. And the Bears just they found something that was working for him for once, and Trubisky actually had a decent game, like Steve pointed out too. So, you know, they didn't get what they needed out of Montgomery this week, but they still got the win. And Trubisky, you know, maybe he got his confidence back a little bit. And then my wide receiver, actually I didn't do a wide receiver, I did a tight end because I talked about who I was high on last week, and Waller. I just thought this was going to be a week that he was going to have a little bit of a bounce back. And I mean, he didn't put up a goose egg, but he only gave you 3 for 40. So in PPR, 7 points, you know, from a guy that has been a top 2-3 tight end all year. You know, it's not really doing it for you. You want 12 or higher, 13 or higher coming from Darren Waller. You know, he's been getting to touchdowns for you this year. And, you know, just hasn't been the same the last few weeks. I mean, I still think he's a great tight end. I still think they have a really bright future with him. But everybody goes through these slumps. So my bad on the Waller, saying he was going to get off the schneid. He's still on the schneid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and actually, it just seems like they're starting to spread the ball around in Oakland.
They're winning, so I mean, I don't think they're they're not going to be upset that he's fallen a little bit, but they are winning, and Carr didn't have a great game, but they're balanced right now. Gruden's got to, like I said, we spoke before the game even on Thursday, like Gruden's got them playing good football right now.
Yep. All right, Steve, who are your dumpster divers for the week?
Ugh. So Aaron Rodgers does it to me again. That game, it turned into a blizzard after the first half, and they really didn't throw the ball much in the second half. You know what I mean? I want to say he only had 11 attempts or something like that in the complete second half. So yeah, just they stopped throwing. You know what I mean, that snow hit and they decided to just go and run the ball. Plus, when you have Aaron Jones playing the way he played, it is what it is. You didn't really need to throw the ball all crazy. Kareem Hunt, we were talking about how we didn't think Kareem Hunt, and it was more that I didn't think Kareem Hunt was going to be used as much as he was in this game. But honestly, they split 33 touches total between the two running backs, which is not going to happen every week. Kareem Hunt had 7 receptions in the game. I don't expect that to be an every week thing. I want to say he only had 5 carries or 4 carries in the game. So it's not like he stole any of the rushing work from, Nick Chubb. I was right in saying that he wasn't going to steal, the running back work from Nick Chubb, and he didn't. So, he finished number 11 at the running back position this week, so he was good, but that was basically because, I think they were playing the Bills and they knew they weren't going to, they were going to be close in that game, and they just were using him in check down role.
He is elite. He's still showing though that he is elite in check downs. He's always that was his thing in Kansas City. He is an elite check down running back. So I mean, he's gonna, just because of that alone, he's gonna earn some time.
Yeah, I definitely think he gets some touches, but I don't think to me, he's still just a handcuff. He's not a guy that I'm starting every week. He has to prove a whole lot more to me than getting 7 receptions in a game where they literally were they could not get the ball to Odell Beckham. They, really any other pass receiver.
Tre'Davious White was all over him.
Yeah, Tre'Davious White was all over him, and they were forcing the ball. I think he had 8 targets in the first half. You know what I mean? They were literally. He had 8 targets, and I want to say he had no catches in the whole first half. So, it was crazy. But Zach Pascal is my other guy. Zach Pascal I was high on. I thought Zach Pascal, had a little bit of a rapport with Brian Hoyer. It ended up being that, Brian Hoyer was just bad. The whole team was bad, honestly. I think the Colts came into this game thinking they were just going to win this game because they're the Colts, and the Dolphins were having none of that. The Dolphins actually looked like an NFL team, which is crazy considering how bad they've been. You know what I mean? When you beat the Jets, that's not an accomplishment, but when you beat this Colts team is legit. This Colts team has won some games against some good teams this year, and
they were 16-point favorites.
Yeah, and they lost this game, which is crazy. So, I think teams will take the Miami Dolphins a little more serious, in the coming weeks, after seeing what they did to the Colts this week.
Yeah, I don't. I think they Brian Hoyer at quarterback. Brian Hoyer stinks.
Yeah, he's bad.
All right, so I'll get into my dumpster divers. A quarterback, Derek Carr. This one wasn't really. Derek Carr didn't have a bad game. He just had a bad fantasy game. It's one of those situations where, they got up 10-0. They ran the ball a ton. He was very efficient. The first half, I think, we talked about it on Friday. Oakland only had the ball for 8 minutes in the first half, or 9 minutes in the first half. So, with that being the case, you're not really going to see a lot of stats. And, the second half, he picked it up a little bit, but, I had Derek Carr as, a starter this week against the Chargers, and a pretty good matchup, especially being at home. And, like I said, it wasn't that he wasn't, a good quarterback this week. He just was not a good fantasy quarterback this week because his stats were just very, very average.
Well, the Chargers actually had the ball a ton that game. Every time they got any kind of momentum or anything, they just kept turning it over. Phillip Rivers threw like 3 interceptions. I think they had a couple fumbles. So, I mean, the Chargers, they owned the possession in that game, but that's why, probably Carr stats were mediocre.
Absolutely. At running back, Mark Ingram. This one was literally due to the fact that they just kicked the shit out of the Bengals and did not hand the ball off to Ingram. I mean, he had the touchdown. Yeah, he had the touchdown. So, luckily he had the touchdown, because if he didn't have the touchdown, you'd be pulling your hair out as an Ingram owner, because he only had 9 carries for 34 yards. Like I said, he got in the end zone, so he did, at least, get you the 6. But if he's walking out of there with a 3.4, you're going crazy, because this is a matchup that he should have dominated, and it literally, the team dominated so much that they didn't need him to do anything. And wide receiver Stephon Diggs, you would have thought he would have saw a ton more work with no Adam Thielen out there, but only gets 3 catches. I think it was 24 yards or 44 yards or something like that. Not a good game from Diggs from a fantasy, aspect. Obviously, Dalvin Cook was just running through the Dallas defense, so Minnesota really didn't need to throw the ball around the field a ton. But, like I said, with no Adam Thielen, you're just expecting a lot more from Stephon Diggs, and this game, he just didn't give it to you.
No.
All right, so now it's waiver wire time. I'll start, throwing off some names, and, we can get into it. Steve will obviously may have a few extra names to throw in here, and, we'll give you guys our thoughts on some of these pickups. All right, so I'm going to start at quarterback. Sam Darnold this week, obviously against the Giants, had a, kind of a bounce back game. He has not been performing well. Do you think this is a kind of because of the matchup, a bad Giants defense, he just took advantage of it? Or do you think Darnold is we've been talking about Darnold's matchups. They're great, for another 3 weeks. Do you think Darnold's a good pickup, or would you pass?
Honestly, I felt like in watching this game, obviously this Giants team is not good. You know what I mean? We all have seen that in the past couple of weeks. We've seen that basically all season, that this team is not good. But I really felt like Sam Darnold needed this game. Like, he needed a game where he could build some confidence, because I think honestly he's been so bad because his confidence was just shaken after that Patriots game. Because if you watch him,
ghosts.
Yeah, when you've seen him, if you watched him the past couple of weeks, he just didn't look like the same guy that we saw week 1 in Buffalo. You know what I mean? He just looked like a completely different guy. Like, he just scared back there, had no time. And we know, the Giants are not a great pass rushing team. He had some time back there. Maybe this game is the game that gives him a little bit of confidence going into the next couple of weeks, and is a guy I would take a chance on if I needed a quarterback. You know what I mean? I'm not super confident, but this time of year, if you're hurting at the quarterback position and you're looking for anybody, Sam Darnold's a guy that most people dropped. And he had a good week this week, so I would give him another chance, knowing that his next couple of weeks are against terrible teams.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, just with the schedule he has, he's bound to have some kind of relevant fantasy week. So I don't think he's a bad option at all. I mean, even if the team stinks, and he's probably going to have at least a few good weeks, 2 or 3 decent weeks with the schedule they have. So I don't mind him either.
Yeah, definitely somebody you might want to look at if you are. Need a stream for next week. I think Patrick Mahomes is probably on bye. Obviously, if Mahomes is on bye, you probably had a quarterback before this that you might have just held on to. So there is still some teams out there with bye weeks. I know Tennessee's on bye next week, but, obviously.
Yeah, only 2 teams on bye next week. That's great.
Yeah, so Ryan Tannehill is another one on the list. He's actually been, really good fantasy-wise. I know he's put up at least 20 fantasy points in the last 4 weeks. So, how do you guys feel about Tannehill? Obviously this week, I don't think you're going to be picking him up on his bye week, But how do you guys feel about Tannehill? I mean, obviously, you only got 2 more weeks of bye weeks left. I'm pretty sure.
Yep.
So, you're not really going to, and he's on bye this week, so you're not going to need him. He comes back. Hopefully you have a quarterback at that point. What do you guys feel about Tannehill? Probably just leaving him on the wire?
Yeah, and it's a situation where if you look at the Titans' schedule over, I want to say, the next couple of weeks, it's pretty rough. I mean, it's not by no stretch of the imagination. Is it a easy schedule where you're going to feel confident in playing Ryan Tannehill? You know what I mean? If you look at the teams he has coming up, obviously he's got his bye next week. Then he's got Jacksonville, Indianapolis, Oakland is a good matchup. Houston is a good matchup, but then he plays New Orleans. I mean, so really, you're probably not playing Ryan Tannehill in your playoffs. If you are going to use him, it's going to be within the next 3 weeks. And I don't know if I'm definitely not playing him against Jacksonville or Indianapolis. Maybe Oakland in week 14 if you absolutely need him, but by then bye weeks are over, and I'm not.
And that's playoff time. I'm not starting Ryan Tannehill in my playoffs.
Exactly. So I mean, not a guy that I'm going out there to get.
Yeah, I'm leaving him on the wire as well.
All right, so this one I'm not even going to say is he a pickup. I'm going to say how much fab are we spending on Brian Hill? Because obviously he will be the go-to guy in Atlanta for the next couple weeks.
I honestly, I don't like to say I told you so, but I did tell you. If you had Devontae Freeman, you needed to pick up Brian Hill because there was a possibility that Brian Hill could straight up take that job from Devontae Freeman because Devontae Freeman has been terrible this year. So I wish you guys that do listen to the podcast listened and went and got him and just put him at the end of your bench and just sat on him, because now you don't have to spend anything. But if you are a Devontae Freeman owner and you are hurting at running back, because obviously if you're starting Devontae Freeman every week, you are hurting at running back. Now you're
you are hurting by starting Devontae Freeman at running back.
You are desperate at this point. You need to go spend every last dollar. If you have a number one priority, you need to spend it on Brian Hill, because like I told you guys, if he they're saying that this injury is probably a 2-week injury, could be a little bit longer. If he's out for 2 weeks and Brian Hill comes and plays well, I'm telling you, he's not getting his job back. Devontae Freeman, they're looking for any reason to cut Devontae Freeman at this point with all the money that they're spending on this guy.
Well, they're cutting him in the offseason. I don't even think that's a question.
Way too much.
That's a question. Yeah, he's getting paid way too much for the lack of production. All right, that's pretty much all for the running backs and quarterbacks. Let's get into wide receivers. Devontae Parker is still on your waiver wire. Obviously, we've talked about him for like the last 3 weeks now. I feel like he was scoring with no abandon. Mm-hmm. He's obviously the only real threat at receiver for the Dolphins with Preston Williams out for the year. So how do you guys feel about picking up Devontae Parker?
If you need a wide receiver, you got to spend the money to go get him. Like you said, Kev, you've been saying it 3 weeks in a row. Like we've been saying, go get this guy. And we told you after last week that, Preston Williams was out for the season. There's no reason not to go get him. He's the number one wide receiver on a Ryan Fitzpatrick-led team. We all know how much Ryan Fitzpatrick does not give a damn. He's chucking that ball up. And guess what? The guy's chucking that ball up to, you know what I mean? It's I don't understand why people didn't go get him yet.
Guys, this game's getting good. This Seattle and San Fran game is getting good.
Yeah, it is.
I'm still going to stick with my no Dolphins clause in my contract, so that's all I think about it.
Yeah, I'm not. I agree with you. I'm not big on Dolphins, but Devontae Parker, he's producing. He's a guy that, I mean, if you need a receiver, he's a guy that's putting up 10 fantasy points a week every week in PPR leagues. So, to me, he's definitely a guy that you go get if you need a receiver.
Yep.
James Washington, we saw what kind of week he had this week. This is not a guy I'm adding. I'll just straight tell you. We've been waiting for James Washington to do this, and this is one of those, flash in the pan weeks. He was not,
I called it. I'm just 9 weeks too late.
Yeah. This is not going to be the norm. I think I'm leaving James Washington on the wire.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Let's see. Darius Slayton. Darius Slayton had a huge week.
Yeah.
10 catches for 121 yards, 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
He looked awesome.
What do you guys think about Slayton? My thing with Slayton and any Giants pass catcher pretty much is that they only do this when they play good matchups.
Yep.
If they don't have if they go up against a bad team or a good defense, you will see a lack of production from them.
Yeah.
And Sterling Shepard is probably going to be back at some point, I would assume. I mean, I don't know what that does for Slayton, but I just can't see him having another game like this year.
No.
We got 2 different Daniel Joneses out there. You got the Daniel Jones that puts up 3-4 touchdowns against bad opponents, and then you got the Daniel Jones that looks like he's still a college quarterback against good opponents. So I mean, overall, I think he's having a decent rookie year for what being thrown in there. Obviously, we all knew that he was going to be in there at some point. We knew Eli wasn't making it through a full season. Eli, they threw him a bone this year as a respect because he brought in the Super Bowls. But yeah, I mean, that's the one thing that worries you about Slayton is it's probably going to cost you a lot because of the game he had. We don't know what Sterling Shepard's future injuries are looking like. The guy seems like he's always got concussions. So I don't know, I don't know what kind of money, you really want to spend on him. Knowing that you're not going to, he's not going to be a workhorse running back that you're going to spend all the money on like, Brian Hill is. You just don't know what you're going to get out of him, and it's a big gamble.
Yeah, I agree. It's, yeah, they just don't have matchups the rest of the season that I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to start Slayton. I just don't see those matchups coming. So, a guy that if you're desperate at wide receiver, I could see you picking up. But other than that, it's not anybody.
You're not going to get him. You're probably not going to get him for cheap. I think someone's going to just.
Yeah, somebody's going to way overspend, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you to, put a whole bunch of fab on him. Honestly, I would put, if you were desperate at wide receiver, I'd put up like 10%, 15% of my total fab. You know what I mean? It's just not a receiver that I'm, looking to go get.
Yep. I agree. Let me just say, we're at the point in this Monday night game where the fumble on the goal line were ripped out of DK Metcalf's hands. I'm just curious what you guys think about this play, because obviously the guy was out of bounds when he grabbed the ball, grabbing the ball,
that's
but I think
that's what they're reviewing right now.
He didn't
it's
have
clearly
control of it.
It's clearly a fumble. I thought maybe Metcalf's knee went down, but
it's clearly a fumble because DK was inbounds, his knee didn't hit the ground, but I don't know if the guy was out of bounds when he touched it. Then I think his momentum carried him in the end zone. They were marking it down at the 1 yard line. It should be a touchback.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see how this winds up getting called.
It looks like it's San Fran's ball.
Yeah, it looks like it's San Fran's ball. They're congratulating him, but it looked to me like when he was on the sideline running towards the end zone.
I don't know why it's like because the ref's still in the screen looking at the play, so it's kind of confusing.
If you look at before they showed this part where he's getting the ball ripped out, it looked to me like they gave San Fran the ball. But it looked to me like he stepped out of bounds. It looked like
he was out of bounds.
Yeah, not the defender.
Did not step out of
he
bounds.
didn't step out of bounds. His
no,
foot.
They were really on there. He was not out of bounds.
Okay, yeah. So, this is the thing. If it's the defender out of bounds and he's ripping at it, the defender doesn't count unless he has the ball in his hands as he's ripping it out. And he doesn't rip it out until after he comes back inbounds. So it's a defender. That rule doesn't go into effect.
That was a beast run by DK.
Now I want to see where they give him the ball at, because
the one. He must be a second behind me.
See, I don't think it should be. His momentum's kind of carrying him into the end zone there. Yeah. I think it should be a touchback personally. But all right, let's now that that's settled, let's get into the tight ends on the waiver wire. Obviously, no more Austin Hooper, at least for a couple weeks. So you're going to have to hit the tight end waiver wire. Let's talk about some of the guys that had good weeks. You had O.J. Howard. He had 4 catches, got into the end zone. Kyle Rudolph last night just had, an insane game for him. Probably one of his better games of his career. You have Vance McDonald, Mike Gesicki, both still on the waiver wire. Which one of these guys if any, would you be aiming for if you had Austin Hooper?
Who did Howard play again? Who did OJ Howard play? Oh yeah, the Arizona Cardinals.
Exactly.
The team
It's
that lets up
amazing.
100 yards and a touchdown or 2 touchdowns to every tight end.
Yeah.
It's
So
literally, I actually want to look that up. Have they given up a touchdown to every?
nah, there was
tight
one.
end?
There was 1
It
or 2
was
weeks that they didn't.
It's either 100 yards or a touchdown to every tight end so far this year.
That's insane. That's just. How do you not change that? How do you not change something about your offense at that point?
Yeah.
I mean, or something about your defense at that point that you're stopping the tight end. Like, get Buda Baker the hell out of there. Like, what are you doing?
The problem is, if you watch the games, Buda Baker he's too small. That's what it is. Like, they have him sticking these big ass tight ends, and Buda's like, what, 6 foot even?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They got him on a 6'5", you know what I mean, George Kittle. Like,
Yeah.
what did you think was going to happen? You know what I mean? Like, and honestly, in that game where he played against Kittle 2 weeks ago, you know, he played him pretty good in the first half, and then Kittle just started going off. You know what I mean? But, you know, he's just too small. He's a good player. You know what I mean? He's not a bad player. He's just too small to be sticking tight ends. They need to get a faster linebacker to stick the tight end position because he's just too small.
Yeah.
But yeah.
All right. So out of these tight ends, I mean, if I had to pick one of these guys, I'd probably go with Rudolph. But I mean, Irv Smith sees a lot of work there.
Yeah.
That's an upcoming tight end for you
Oh, yeah,
guys.
he's gonna be good.
Irv Smith is going to be very good pass catcher in this league.
Yeah, Rudolph is. I mean, he had the 2, you know, basically goal line touchdowns, but he just looks older. He looks like, you know, he's aging this year, and tail end of his career. And yeah, you're right. Irv Smith he's definitely their future, and I think he's got a bright future ahead of him. He looks like he's legit.
Yeah.
Yep.
What round did they draft him this year? Third,
Second.
He was a
Second.
second round
Yeah,
pick.
second round pick.
Second round.
Yeah,
All
if you look at Tampa Bay's rest of season schedule, they got New Orleans next week. They got Atlanta, Jacksonville, Indianapolis, Detroit, Houston. So OJ Howard, you know, I know he's been dropped in a lot of leagues. If he's available in your league, you know, I don't like him this week against New Orleans, but I like him against Atlanta. And I like him, you know, I don't like him a lot against Jacksonville, but I would start him there too. And against Indy, I'm probably not starting him there. But against Detroit and Houston, yeah, I like him. So, you know, if he's available, you know, if you're dying next week,
You're just praying that OJ Howard call comes through for you eventually.
Oh
To finish
no,
off
I'm
this
over
year.
that. He's just been terrible. He's had 10 weeks of terrible play. Well, 9 weeks of terrible play, and you know, that call is out the window. He's done. But you know, with the matchups coming up, and when you look at what's available on the waiver wire, like I'm not going to trust my season to Mike Gesicki. You know what I mean? Mike Gesicki is just not somebody that I'm going to throw on my team. You know, at least with OJ, I can feel like the dude has the talent and you know, could possibly play better in the second half of the season. But yeah, that call was just that was gone 8 weeks ago.
tight end is so bad right now that if Howard puts together a decent last, you know, third of the season, which he's very capable of doing. I mean, this could be like the game that, you know, gets him off the schneid, moves him forward. But I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if he finishes a top 10 tight end still. I mean, just because the tight end position is so rough.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I mean, even if he does, he was so bad in the first half. My call on him was, you know, that was probably my worst call of the season. OJ, how high I was on OJ Howard is probably my worst call of the season so far.
I'll just say, so I'll say this. We talked about this before the year. Tight end is always bad. Every year it's bad. So that's why Steve and I were so, you know, we put so much emphasis on drafting a tight end in those first, you know, 3 rounds, getting the Kelsey or the Kittle or even the Zach Ertz. You know, Ertz has been pretty minuscule this year, but he's still one of the best 6 tight ends there are out there. You know, if you got Waller, Hooper, or Henry, you know, good luck. You know, you were very fortunate, but you know, Henry was almost a waiver wires pretty much before he came back.
Yeah.
You know, Evan Ingram, he was good. Now he missed a game. He hasn't really been, you know, he's been up and down since missing the game, and now he missed another one this past week. So he's obviously still one of the top 6 or 7 tight ends. But after those 6 or 7, man, it's like a roller coaster, man. It just goes right down. It's a deep slope.
Yeah, it's non-existent basically.
Yeah, check this out. All right, so if you look at the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So the top 12 tight ends in PPR scoring, right? Their average points per game, you have Austin Hooper at 17.2. You got Hunter Henry at 15.5. Travis Kelce at 14.8. Darren Waller at 14.3. Then you have George Kittle, who's out this game tonight, 14.2. You got Mark Andrews at 13.8. Evan Ingram.
I forgot about Andrews.
Yeah, Evan Ingram was 13.7. And then Will Dissly, who was on IR, was 12.3. You got Greg Olsen at 10. Zach Ertz at 12.3 also. I'm sorry, I missed Zach Ertz. But 12.3 also with Will Dissly. Then Darren Fells at 9.4 and Gerald Everett at 9.2. So I don't care who the best predictor of tight ends in the history of the world is. You were not predicting that Darren Waller would be a top 5 guy. You were not predicting that Mark Andrews would be a top 7 guy. You were not predicting that Will Dissly would be a top 8 guy. And that's where these guys are in point per game right now. So
Hooper number 1 overall.
Hooper number 1. No one said Hooper would even be a top 10 guy. People were telling you I was telling you to take Austin Hooper, in round 13, and I would be cool with him as my starting tight end. I said that numerous times in the preseason, and I had no inkling that he would be the number 1 tight end in fantasy. I just figured he would be a consistent 8 points a week. You're getting in around 13, and you'd be happy with that with the guys that are left. You know what I mean?
He's not going to finish number 1 now. And
no.
I'll tell you what's really Hunter Henry missed how many games this year?
Yeah, a bunch of games.
He's still the number 9 tight end in total points.
Yeah.
And he missed probably 7 games this year. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
It is. Tight end is bad every year, and honestly, when you go into fantasy football and what we told you in the beginning of the year, I know a lot of people will tell you, fantasy analysts included, your friends, whoever, will tell you, taking a tight end in the 3rd round, guess what? If you took Travis Kelce in the 2nd round, at the end of the 1st round, right, you're probably pissed off about it. But guess what? He is scoring basically 14.5 points a game, right? And you never have to think about him. He just goes in your lineup. You play him every week. You're not sitting there trying to figure out who the hell to play this week. And that
was with no
huge.
Patrick Mahomes for a few weeks as well.
Exactly. And that's huge. That is so huge in your fantasy team, not to have to go to the waiver wire every single week and figure out what the hell tight end I'm going to play, trying to make trades to get this guy and that guy. Just if you draft that guy, right, you just don't have to think about it anymore. You know what I mean?
Well, let's look at it even closer, Steve. Let's look at this. If you draft him in the late 1st, early 2nd round, let's say you drafted a receiver there who's probably 17 points, like a number 1 receiver. So let's say you have a 3-point drop off between the two of them. If you're drafting a tight end as your number 1 in the 9th, 10th round, the drop off between that guy and a wide receiver 2 or 3 you're going to get is much more than 3 points. It's probably like 6 or 7 points. So statistically, you're making a much wiser decision.
Exactly. And the guys that you were taking in round 6, 7, 8, 9, Eric Ebron, averaging 7.9 points per game. Jared Cook, 8.2 points per game. Jack Doyle, even in the later rounds, 8.1, who's better than basically both of those guys. Dallas Goedert, you know what I mean? You wasn't even drafted. You're getting, 7.4 points per game. So just the Vance McDonald. How many people were telling you to draft Vance McDonald in round 8? You know what I mean? Round 7. Vance McDonald, been terrible. 7.7 points per game. You know what I mean? You could have picked up Gerald Everett off the waiver wire and been getting 9.2 points per game. That's a full 2 points more than what you were getting from this guy. You mean Greg Olsen, scoring 10 double-digit points, scoring 10 points per game, and Greg Olsen's like the least sexy tight end in the history of football. I mean, he's just a guy that you're starting every week because he can get you double digits. You know what I mean?
It's gonna be a Hall of Famer
for real. You know what I mean? Like, don't get me wrong, I love Greg Olsen for career stats, but right now he's a shell of what he used to be, and he's still one of the best tight ends in fantasy football. What does that tell you?
All right, so that's pretty much wraps up the waiver wire. Steve, do you want to go on your rant?
Yes. Okay, so really quickly, guys. There are other podcasts that do, I know CBS does a segment called, Regulators, right? Basically, they take your question, they see, what's going on in your fantasy league, and they give you some advice. So this segment is not going to be called Regulators or anything like that. This is going to be things that, have happened in our league that really annoy us. And this just happened to me in a league this week. So I don't know how many of you guys play in leagues where if a team quits mid-season, right, your commissioner is supposed to put in the starting lineup for that team just so that, it doesn't screw the rest of the league, right? We all have leagues like this where, you play a guy that has 4 guys on bye week and, that guy ends up not winning and you needed that team to win because of this or that or whatever, right? If that is not a part of your league, right? If that is not a rule in your league, you need to go to your commissioner and talk to him and say, hey, listen, either we could change this mid-season or at the end of the season, but this needs to be something. But if that is not a rule, do not quit the league or cry and tell people that you want your money back. That is the most ridiculous. We had this in our league. This is a big money league. It is worth a lot of money. A guy basically, lost, is going to lose this week. He needs another team to lose this week. The guy that he's playing basically threw the game. He has 4 players on bye in his starting lineup, but there is no rule that says that the guy can't do that. You know what I mean? He paid a lot of money to be in this league, and if he chooses not to put in a starting lineup, it is what it is. So the guy wants his money back because this guy's not putting a starter. Check it out. There is no crying in fantasy football. I know you guys seen the movie A League of Your Own. There's no crying in baseball. There's no crying in fantasy football. If you want to cry, go cry to yourself. Do not cry to your league commissioner because you don't like a rule. Okay? Go figure it out like a man or a woman, an adult. Go to your league commissioner and say, hey, listen, we need to change this rule. This is a terrible rule. We all vote on this rule and get it changed mid-season so that this guy doesn't keep throwing games and screwing us all. Right? That is 100% legit the way you handle it. You do not tell the commissioner that you want your freaking money back. That is just ridiculous.
All right. There you have it. Don't ask for refunds in fantasy football.
You do not ask for refunds in fantasy football. Like, what is this? Unbelievable.
All right. So that wraps us up for tonight. Remember, don't forget to check us out on the website, www.fourthandinchesff.com. It's www.4thandinchesff.com. For a bunch of content, you got articles, blogs, player profiles, rankings, and you can subscribe to our VIP content. And until next time, peace out, guys.
Peace.
Later.